Hello? You gonna say anything?
Oh,
Because
hello.
I kind of had a mouthful.
Oh, well, I didn't know. I'm sharing out the feed.
Well, Lisa made cookies. I grabbed some
Hello,
cookies.
welcome to the Insane Asylum. Friday night's podcast. We are joined, and too bad we didn't record it last Saturday because that would have been a blast. We were joined today by Dal Kazmarek and Darren Buss.
Hey guys.
And last Friday, I had a chance to talk to both of them, and we should have recorded
And I
that.
didn't get a chance to because I
Yeah, you missed
had
out.
other crap that I was doing or something. I don't remember.
Well, it's 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So
See? Fresh baked cookies. They're peanut butter chocolate chip cookies.
I'll put them away now. Now you're making me hungry.
They're fresh baked.
Yeah, I might
So,
be out getting some brats and burgers and putting them on the grill later. So,
that's always a good thing.
oh yes, fire up the grill for the first time this year. Yeah, I've been using my air
Really?
fryer for making steaks.
Really? First time this year? I've already
Yeah.
had my grill fired up like 3 times.
I've just been busy.
I'm Wisconsin. We're up here in Wisconsin, man. I don't care if it's snow on the ground. I'll fire that thing up and throw some steaks and stuff on them.
I've done that before. But I've just been using my air fryer, my Instapot air fryer. And 13 minutes and my steaks are done and ready to go.
I've got a 12-quart air fryer oven, and I probably use that more than any other utensil or appliance I have in the house right now.
I'm tempted to use an air fryer grill by Ninja.
I've heard of those. I haven't
Runs off of
seen those yet.
pellets, but I don't know. It's interesting. What do you think, Dale?
Hi, Dale.
Hey, how you doing? My grill's been DOA for a while. It's been sitting out there, kind of rusting away, and even though I do like a nice steak or burgers or something on the grill, it's much better. It just haven't had the incentive or the willpower to get up start it up yet. So
Yeah. Hey, Tom. What's up, buddy?
I think I want to get one of those flat iron.
Oh, the Blackstones?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a friend of mine has a
I think
Blackstone.
that'd be kind of cool.
They like it, I guess.
Yeah, my grill's kind of DOA like Dale's. It's been out there for quite a while, just rusting in the driveway.
The one I use is infrared grill, is what mine is. So I like that. It kind of cooks things evenly on like a hot plate in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still got to use propane gas and all that stuff still too. But
Mine's a charcoal.
yeah, I kind of gave up on charcoal on that years ago after our first house we had, and it just for some reason me and charcoal do not mix very well. And it was so funny because my wife she saw me cooking and I did the flipping of the grill and all of a sudden the flame shot out.
Oh, here he goes with his.
It singed my arm.
Hank Hill.
Tank Hill.
And she said, "No more charcoal for you." So she's banned me from my own grill once in a while because I light myself on fire once in a while.
Wow.
That's when I was using the matches. When my thing wasn't working, I use a match, throw it in there.
Boom.
No,
But you're an igniter?
yeah.
When your little igniter wouldn't go and you get the gas on and you light a match and just.
Yep. Yeah, I got my arms pretty good.
It's more fun. It's more fun. when your nighter don't want to work and you got the gas on, you leave the top closed and you lift it up about that far and throw the match in there at that point.
Hey, Ron.
Hey, Ronald. Yeah. So I try to be more careful now, so I don't get um, in a
Yeah,
time
third
of my
degree burns
grill.
don't they don't heal very well.
No, they don't, and they stink like crazy.
All that singed hair.
Yeah. Yeah, that's bad. It's bad enough when I was working in a factory, or I still do, but I was working in a heat treat factory, and we were using um, oh, what is it? I'm trying to think here. Where, well, it's a thing where you put the in the furnace and stuff.
Mhm.
And my buddy, he was on the side there, and he's a little short and a little chunky, got a big ass beard and hair, a small bit of hair and a hat, and he was on the side of the furnace, and the thing is cooking at 3,000 degrees. Okay, he is standing there making out his chart. Put the door down. As the door goes down, he forgets when the door goes down, the flames go whew, aside. Oh yeah, it got him. It got him. He singed half of his face with the hair off.
Oh jeez.
Uh, and his hat was on fire. Everything. Oh my god! And the whole side of his arm was all burnt.
Yeah, that's
Talk
crazy,
about
man.
stinking. Holy shit!
That is crazy.
It's probably in between of that and probably shitting himself. Sorry too.
So what are we talking about, Joe?
We just put
You
this together
you
because of last Saturday. So I mean,
and I wasn't on
I
with
know
you
you
guys
weren't there, but if you guys,
okay, so
we started out, we were like, Darren started out by telling us about the museum.
Yep.
So if you want to, so because we were just talking about our trip that we were planning to take, and Darren's going to help us out with that. So Darren, let people know
Okay.
what about the
Uh.
museum and what you do there.
Okay. So, I do the paranormal program at the Washara County Historical Museum and Society in Watoma, Wisconsin. Um, and we do tours out there. We do investigations out there Fridays and Saturdays when they're available. Uh, and dates in June for anybody that's listening. The dates are open in June. 7th and the 15th are taken. So if you want to investigate, let me know. Send me a message on my messenger, and I can hook you up. So now, so yeah, we got a lot of interesting stuff in the museum itself. I mean, we have a war room. We have an upper and lower jail cells. We have a house too that's on the other side of the jail, and that's where two families did live in that house during the time of when it was going. I believe 1969 was the last time I think it was open for our set, or it could be 79. I could be wrong. If Lori's in chat, she can mention what was last year it was in use. Um, but we have about roughly 13, 14 spirits or so in the building itself. We have children's spirits, we have adult spirits, we have a spirit that, if you know the history between Plainfield and uh, that story there, you'll know who I'm talking about. I can't. We try not to use his name along with the museum, just because we just don't want that attention. Um, and I think it's a kind of a deal between Washara and or Watoma and Plainfield on that aspect. But we do have trigger objects there that are his, um, and we have his shotguns, we have his skis, and we have one of the three knives that he used on his victims. And the knife is the big part of that trigger object because it holds a lot of energy. I've seen it jump off of people's hands. I've seen people get their personalities flipped on their heads It happened to me, and I didn't know it, and I was live. Um, and there's some that it really gets them emotional. So that's the kind of story behind that aspect of it. We do have another spirit in the upstairs jail, and he's a German soldier. He likes to push women down the stairs. And so anytime a woman goes up in the upstairs jail part, we require a male to go up there with them at all times just to make sure for their safety. Um, so, but the children like to play in the house side of things a lot. Um, we catch a lot of great Class A EVPs. Doors will shut. Phantom smells. Um, we have an attic too that is pretty active. Um, but on the flip side of that, we also have a 1850s schoolhouse that's about a mile back behind us. So, and that's all included with the investigations, which we run from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. So, uh, and it's relatively cheap. I think it's a good deal. Um, Donations are $30 per person to do that, and the um, trigger objects are an additional $30 per group. So it's not per person; it's per group. Um, but and then we also do tours, just regular tours on Wednesdays. Uh, so if you don't want the paranormal side of it and just the history side of it, you go on Wednesdays and you can do tours that way.
Cool.
So
That sounds pretty good. I wouldn't mind doing that. So is
yeah,
that what you're talking about, Joe? Is going on something like that? Go do
Well,
that?
that's Dale. We were talking about when Dale comes up for the all those trips in one day. His guest that's coming from, where was it? Where was your guest coming from, Dale?
London, England.
Yeah, requested something like this. So it's more for the guy that's not to be mentioned, I guess.
right, right. We just try to, like I said, we just try to obey the rules. There are rules when we go to the museum. We can't have his name in any of the texting along with the museum itself. Um, but if you go to like the cemetery and post something there, well, then you can use his name because you're at the cemetery. So it's a whole different deal. But they really, Plainfield is a very tough town to go into because they will shout obscenities at you if you're walking by the warehouse. Um, the cemetery itself is fine during the day, but there are people that do come out and watch you and see what you're doing. If you go out there during the nighttime, they will come out there and with shotguns and tell you to get out. Um,
That's
but
pretty rude.
yeah, yeah, because in the state of Wisconsin, we can't investigate cemeteries, but I mean just at night though. But so that's kind of how they are about things. So Plainfield is a very hard town. I mean, to just in general. Um, I know a group that
Well, they
did get. Go ahead.
well, no, I was gonna say they should understand. I mean, that this
Yeah,
particular
it's a town that wants to
this
forget.
particular person, I understand. I know that they want to forget about it,
Yep,
but
but it's
this
history.
particular person, because of what he did, like you said, it's history, and it made the town famous at that point. And you're gonna have, no matter what, you're gonna have people all over the place that's gonna want to come in there and check it out and see what they can find.
Right.
So you would think that they would actually embrace it and possibly embrace it and maybe um, make more of a tourist destination or a money making operation out of it for the town.
Well, and the thing is that a friend of mine, he would definitely, if he had the option, if they did not burn the house down, he would turn that into a museum in itself. But um, it's just, it's a hard topic for a lot of people in general. And it's just one of those places that you got to be very careful what you do. Unfortunately, yes, we all know if we were able to use his name in a lot of postings and connections with it, yeah, we could make a ton of money, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
the reality is that I have a board that I have to go through with things and get things approved, and that's just
Right.
how I have to do things. And it is a small town, so when you got small towns like Watoma and Plainfield close to each other, they're 20 miles apart, but they're still
Mm-hmm.
close. It's a big deal. Now, if it was like an Appleton or Green Bay or Milwaukee, it would get lost in the mix where people wouldn't care so much. But if you
Right.
look at
Because it's a big enough.
Dahmer, it's a whole different situation down there too with Dahmer.
Oh yeah, yeah. With Milwaukee being as big as it is and everything, then
Yeah,
yeah,
but
it is a little bit
they
easier.
still in Milwaukee they still demolished the apartment building,
Right.
and it is now just an empty lot as far as I know.
Yeah. But they still recognize the history, and people still go down. Even though the Netflix
Right.
special that was out, people will still go down there and try and do stuff.
Yeah, but like you said, Plainsfield is a very small town, and what he did was pretty heinous.
Right.
And you know, everybody in that town was affected of, you know, because he not only did that, but he robbed all those graves and did all of that too. So it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
who
And you're
knows?
talking 40 people that he beat
Yeah,
up, but
and
he only kept 10 of them.
and think about how many people that lived in that town that are related to those people.
Right? And where he's buried, there's the victims are around him yet.
Right.
So, um, but if you want to know more about all that stuff and the history behind him and the movies that like we know that Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Silence of the Lambs and Psycho, that was all based off of him.
Right.
Okay, but reading aspect wise and for investigation aspect wise, definitely check out Scott Bowser on Amazon because he has written 3 books about him. And it's got a lot of stuff, a lot of information that is really good and kind of like a handbook, if you will. If you want to dig up some information on your investigation and bring it out, you can. Um, I just encourage people not to provoke because we all know what happens when you provoke.
Remember that, Mark. Don't provoke.
So,
What? You
um,
talking to me? No,
Yeah, I'm talking to you.
but
no.
we've already had to ban one team to the museum just because things went awry and they can't come back. So yeah, there are strict rules, but it's also a good time. We make things a good time at this museum for people. Um, we like to see what they do, watch how they investigate. We do have a refrigerator downstairs for people to put their stuff in there. We have multiple places you can put your gear, and we got a couple bathrooms inside. There is no outhouse, so it's most locations have an outhouse or a porta potty, and we do not have that. But so for what we use for or charge for donations is I think is pretty cheap, a good deal, and all the money goes back to the museum anyway. So for projects and whatever they need it for. Anybody else have any more questions?
The only thing I was going to kind of mention is that you talk about small town like Plainfield. I mean, we had a pretty significant incident that happened down in Plainfield, Illinois. If you remember, that was I don't know if I'm going to mention too much about it because there's kind of still lingering sores about that, but there was a number of people killed in a restaurant in Plainfield, Illinois. And that restaurant, to my knowledge, was torn down. It's not there anymore. They do have some sort of memorial, at that site for those people that were killed. So I don't know if it's what you might call a coincidence, but a lot of times, I've noticed that there are similarities between, places where people have committed atrocities and sometimes cities' names. It doesn't happen that often, but it's how many Plainfields are in the United States? I mean, I don't know.
Right.
How many Milwaukee's where Jeffrey Dahmer committed things? I mean, there could be another Milwaukee or so. I mean, I'm not sure. But
They just had another one, I think, another Dahmer type situation. But anyhow, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, Jeffrey Dahmer just didn't do stuff in the Milwaukee area. I mean, it was even in the Chicagoland area. There was a restaurant that we were talking about, not that long ago here, the three of us, in Chicago called Carol's Place. And Carol's Place, I was able to verify that this was a Jeffrey Dahmer pickup location because a friend of mine, John Borowski, has written several books on, mass murderers and mass murderers. And he did focus a lot on Jeffrey Dahmer. And we had discovered that at one time that place was still standing. And of course, there was no murders that took place there, but there was a gentleman that was picked up. It is a gay bar, and Jeffrey Dahmer often frequented locations like that, and he did pick up somebody from there. I don't remember his name offhand, and I probably wouldn't say it on the air, but he did pick up somebody from there, and he was killed. So we had tried to contact, in fact, we were in contact with the owner at the time, who was in the process of selling the building. He wanted to get out of the business. And so, we thought that would be an ideal opportunity, perhaps, to get in there to do an investigation to see if there was anything, residual. Because, somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, Richard Speck, Henry Lee Lucas, Charles Manson. I mean, the names go on and on and on.
Jack Ripper.
They have an aura about them that people can feel physically. And just going into a location, like Carol's Place, there could have been some sort of aura left behind by him. So we did contact the owner. We wanted to do an investigation. He kind of, was reneging. He was kind of like, procrastinating. I'm not sure if I want to do this or not. I immediately said, well, you're selling the building, right? So, I mean, we're not like going to disturb any business. And if you want, we can do this totally anonymous, which many times during investigations, I've pledged a confidentiality that we would not release this, on our, Facebook page, YouTube, the website. It would just stay in my files here. And even then, he was kind of leery about this. So one afternoon, one of my fellow researchers from my group, Ghost Research Society, had just driven past, gave me a call and says, "Guess what I'm seeing?" I said, "No, what are you seeing?" "The place is gone. It was torn down. It was knocked down completely." And I can't tell you how irritated I was when I heard that, because not only was he was not just going to sell the building, but I guess maybe they couldn't find somebody who wanted it, so they decided to tear it down, start from scratch, and build something else there. I don't know if I haven't been back there since to see if there has been something built down there, because even if there was something else built down there, I've noted that you can tear a building down, knock a building down, build a building, knock a building down. It's the property where this stuff took place. It's what you might call stigmatized property. That something remains, some sort of energy, some sort of residual, something like that, that people can feel and pick up on, psychics, investigators with equipment and so forth. So I haven't been back there since. I think it would be an interesting drive to go past there to see if anything has been built. But I can't tell you how irritated I was, because, I mean, not only he wasn't going to be, there anymore, but the building wasn't going to be there anymore. So, I mean, why not let somebody like our team go in there to do an investigation?
No, I totally get that. I mean, there's a lot of places that would make more sense if you're not using for business practices. Then why not let us go and investigate? And then we can come back with stuff for you. I mean, who knows? We can make it into a location that people can do this, and you can make money with the building itself.
Absolutely.
We
And
ended up running into that early in our investigating. I ran into something like that. I can't remember what the shop was at the time, but there was a lot of story. I could probably look it up, but I remember that it was in Stoughton. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was like the like buy and sell shop or something down there.
Yeah, it was like an antique shop or some shit, So it wasn't like and I got in contact with him. Somebody gave me the name and people that own the building, and then I went through all this because it was up for sale. And at the time, Mark and I wanted to investigate it. It was an empty building. The business wasn't even open.
right.
I got to talk to the owners, and I says, well, we don't have to release nothing until after the sale or anything like that. We just want to investigate and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, so I contacted them before leaving, and it's like, no answer. So we never really got to investigate the place. I don't even know if the building still exists. I haven't been out in that area since then. No, it was out in Stoughton.
Well, and antique stores are notorious for being haunted. I mean, you got a variety of trigger objects in there. You got objects that held great sentimental value to people that had those in their possession. A psychic can pick up, an object using what they call psychometry, and literally get feelings and vibrations and whatever off an object. I mean, we investigated several antique stores. There was one in I don't know if I'm going to mention the name. It might be on my website, but it's in Lockport, Illinois, and we were giving unfettered access to this place. So there was like a couple of floors. We had set up our command center on the upstairs. So we basically set the cameras, night shot cameras, equipment, REM pods, EMF devices, passive infrared motion sensors, things of that nature, all downstairs, and we were monitoring it from a central location. So we didn't want to contaminate the area with us walking around or talking and stuff like that. And I can't tell you how many times we heard what sounded like objects being picked up, examined, and set back down. You could hear the tink of like china or crystal. It was these types of objects that were in there, and we heard it at the time as though something or someone was picking up, looking at it, examining it, putting it down, going to the next object, examining, putting it down. And it went on for several minutes. So eventually, when it finally stopped, he said, well, it might be a good time to go down there and kind of check out what's going on down there. And of course, there was nothing really moved. It may have just been a residual sound of somebody picking up those objects and looking at them. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've been involved in investigations where people, even in private homes, will say that they're in the living room and they hear like the whole rack of dishes just fall and break on the floor, and they go in there and they find nothing out of the ordinary. It's just the sound of something that happened in the past that is now being replayed as kind of a residual haunt, if you will.
Right. No, I find those kind of interesting. I mean, it's phantom smells. I find interesting because we have a kitchen in the museum, in the house part, and it was a couple weeks ago that they had a team there, and it was weird because it was like I want to say 8 o'clock at night, and it was a German lady that cooked it in the house, and it smelled like sauerkraut. I mean, strong sauerkraut for hours on end. And wherever we moved, it moved with us to the point where I had to cover my nose with my shirt. It was so strong. I'm like, I got to get out of here. I'm like, geez, Louise. But then, and the funny thing is that about 1:45 when they were wrapping their stuff up, I went upstairs and make sure the lights are off, doors are shut, and all that stuff. And I went past the kitchen. Not a single scent of sauerkraut. It was
Wow.
gone. It was completely gone. So I'm like, my goodness. I mean, for that amount of hours, for that smell to be there is crazy.
It is.
So, um, but on a note, real quick about the locations, Plainfield with the hardware store, that is actually being turned into a Mexican restaurant.
Hmm.
Believe it or not.
Oh,
So,
I
I'm like,
found
hey,
the location that was in Stoughton. It was a secondhand shop, and
Isn't that what I said?
the building was built in 1891, and they keep the story is they keep people that go and investigate keep hearing glass breaking on the second floor, but when they go up there, nothing's broken. Okay, so the story goes before it was like a secondhand shop, it was also a private residence at one time. Something happened, don't know what. It just says that it's known because the town police chief jumped out the window on the second floor, broke the glass, jumped out the window, and committed suicide.
well, that's probably his energy then. Just
So they
wreaking
keep
havoc.
hearing this reoccurring thing where they hear the glass breaking on the second floor, but there's no glass broken.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you look at when people take their own lives, um, so to speak, they're stuck in limbo, right? And don't know where they're going to be. So that could be an absolute play on what happened, and he just keeps reliving that moment, and he
Yeah,
can't get
it's like
past it.
yeah, I forget the term, but it's like it keeps repeating itself.
Yeah, residual.
Yeah,
It's a
residual.
residual, not an intelligent, huh?
So,
See,
in a way, how would you break that though? That's the thing. How do you break that cycle?
But then, like Dale said, now this is the other thing, and I don't know the exact history and where it occurred, but I was looking at the map, and I know Stoughton pretty well because I was raised out in Oregon for a while, and so I spent a lot of time in Stoughton. But I know this about Stoughton: there's a lot of history there, and there are a few bad things. I mean, really bad things that happened in Stoughton, and one of them was during my lifetime. Okay, and I'll never forget it because I was stuck at the VFW, and the VFW got put on lockdown. I mean, we ended up locking all the doors. What, I don't remember the name, but there was a 1% group that came through. Okay, 1% biker group that came through. They ended up killing. No, it wasn't the Hells Angels. They ended up killing my aunt's husband during that, when that happened. And it was actually, some say it was like a hit, but it was a big deal and a big story out there. And it wasn't the first time, I guess, things like that happened in Stoughton back then. This was like in the 70s.
Oh, biker gangs were really big back in the 70s, weren't they?
Right. They were all over.
Yeah.
And in Wisconsin, we had at least 3 or 4 1%ers. And the Hells Angels hadn't made it this far yet.
Yeah. But also, wasn't there, what decade was that with the Zodiac Killer?
That was in the 80s, wasn't it?
I'm not sure.
The Zodiac Killer, and
Yeah.
he did all of his killing and stuff.
That was 70s.
Wasn't it like late 70s, early 80s?
No, it started in the early 70s and went on for a while. He really taunted the police.
And I think he did all his killing down in the San Francisco area.
I don't remember the exact areas, but yeah, they were all in California, the killings. That was one that to this date they haven't solved that mystery. Because he said when the one code that got broken, with the help of the public, because they had to go that far, because technology, you didn't have the internet and the computer back then. No cell phones, none of that crap in the 70s. They had got it cracked, and he said in that, somewhere in there, you would find his name in his codes. To this day, they still haven't figured out even where it is. And they've got one of those cryptid messages that still hasn't been cracked.
You often wonder why. I mean, you think about people that do atrocities like that, and the first thing that usually comes to mind is these people got to be crazy. They got to be crazy. They got to be demented. They got to be not right. But then you look at somebody like the Zodiac Killer. I mean, he plotted this stuff out. He had these very, almost unbreakable codes that nobody could break. And I mean, how can a person both, be kind of, in my opinion, kind of demented to do the stuff that he did, but at the same time be very smart? It's almost like left brain, right brain, part of it being evil, part of it being good. Maybe he's kind of like going in between, dementedism, I guess, if that would be being considered a word, and
sounds right,
and maybe like a genius at the same time. I mean, I mean, you got to remember during the war, during World War II, they had very smart people that were cryptologists, I guess that would be the term, to try to break these codes that the German Nazis were using, to sink U-boats and stuff like that. And I'm surprised that they didn't try to, or maybe they did, try to get some of these people to work on this. They could have, cracked that.
They tried, Dale. They tried. I watched a lot of documentaries on the Zodiac Killer, and to this day, they've had some of the best at code breaking to try to break these cryptid messages, and no luck.
Well, usually there has to be some sort of a pattern. And that's what they look for in a code, is some sort of pattern with certain symbols make are certain letters or certain numbers. And once you can figure out like the first letter or a certain letter, then you can insert that letter throughout the whole thing, and then you kind of work backwards from that. But even that's you're talking about, the whole alphabet and all the numbers. I mean, that's a lot of mixing up of the code to where it would be virtually impossible to break.
Yeah.
You know what this reminds me of, though? A lot of another unsolved case and mystery is the Villisca Axe murder house.
Yeah. I was actually
That's
there. Our group was there.
I mean, you watch these shows. A priest comes up all the time. Minister, I think. Was it a minister? Or, it's been priest a few times. Maybe a pastor came up a couple
Reverend,
times too.
something like that.
Reverend, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a path there too, because there's talk that he might have stayed at Melbourne Manor, which used to be a hotel at the time, and he took a train to Villisca to do what he did to do. Suspected he got paid for what he did. He even turned himself in, saying that he did it, but they didn't believe him and they let him go. So, the mystery remains: who did it?
Yeah.
So there's clues there too it's like point blank of the clues, but
Yeah, they broke the first code.
so
He sent out like 3 or
reminds me of
4
it.
to the news media and police departments.
I'm trying to think of what they call them. If they were cryptograms or what they called those things. There was a name for that. There wasn't just some code, but it was called something. It was a cryptogram or something like that. Or
because he used all forms of to make that code. Yeah, symbols and all kinds of shit.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you another one that comes to mind too. And we had a chance when I was there in England last year, Jack the Ripper, which is still an unsolved murder, unsolved murders. And we were able to visit all the Jack Ripper sites when we were there. What they look like now is quite different from what they looked like back then.
Hey, Dale.
The Whitechapel district.
Dale.
But, yeah.
Didn't they have a theory that Jack the Ripper may have been actually an American that came over there?
Yeah, one of the theories is that the Herman Mudgett or Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, the one that killed so many people in the murder mansion in Chicago during the Columbian Exposition of 1893, that it was unusual. It was very interesting because it seemed like they were able to trace him going to England on a manifest, a passenger manifest. And when he was in England, the murders here at least appearances here in Chicago had stopped. And then when he got there to England, that's when it was in the height of the Ripper thing. And then when he left to come back, all the murders stopped in London, but continued in here in Chicago. And I actually met the great-great-grandson of Herman Mudgett. I can't think of his first name. It just escapes me for right now. But he actually wrote a book called Bloodlines that he actually talks about his great-great-grandfather being perhaps one of the very first serial killers here in the United States, and how when they broke into this murder castle, I mean, they found the atrocities of all these remains down in vats of acid in the basement. Some of the bones had been thrown out in the backyard, and dogs had nibbled on them. There were airtight rooms that people would be asphyxiated. There were skeletons hanging in closets because he was a doctor. He was a doctor that had been to the University of Michigan and got his degree as a doctor. and he was supposedly one of his motives, they said, was that he was stripping the bones to sell the bones to universities at the time, not knowing that when the universities bought these from him, that these were murder victims. That's a.
And then, of course, at that point, that's the perfect place to hide them all.
Yeah. I mean, you got to remember during the Columbian Exposition in 1893, there were hundreds of thousands of people that were coming to Chicago to view this. And so, I mean, if 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 maybe disappeared, they wouldn't even go notice with the big crowds that were coming here until eventually they never showed up back home. And they said, well, where was this last seen? Well, they went to Chicago to see this exposition. And they eventually kind of narrowed it down because he made a lot of stupid mistakes too at the end. But it's the building today obviously has been knocked down. It actually burnt down kind of mysteriously when he was in prison. It was thought that maybe one of his associates, if he had an associate, was trying to burn it down to get rid of some of the evidence that was there. But now, since 1938, it's a United States post office. And people in the post office to this day have felt very strange. Animals that, people walk their dogs. The dogs don't like walking on that side of the street. They will whine, they'll pull away. We know animals are very sensitive to that kind of stuff. And, we had a chance, literally a slim chance, but we had a chance to get into to do an investigation. There it is right there. That's what it looked like back then. And unfortunately, they were going to do for public television.
That's cool.
And there's the post office today. Yes, it is. And unfortunately, whoever set up the show used at least for public television at that time, the word you don't really want to use, paranormal. If we could have gotten in there to do history, genealogy with a mixture of paranormal, I think it would have had a better chance to get the show done. I know Jeff Mudgett, that was his name, Jeff Mudgett. He actually went into the tunnels, and part of the post office overlaps part of. Was it the other way around? But some of the basement of the post office is part of the original basement of the murder castle. When you talk about creepy, that would be creepy.
Didn't Jack the Ripper make his way up to Wisconsin too?
Into where?
Up in Wisconsin.
For
some reason, Baraboo is calling my name out for that. I could be wrong.
Okay. I'm not sure.
I'm thinking he made his way up here too, but I think he was on his last legs on that one.
But you got to remember too that Jack the Ripper, one of the possible candidates, and there were many. There was some royalty that was actually implicated. There was a doctor that was implicated, and of course, Herman Mudgett was actually a doctor. I mean, his real name was Herman Mudgett. His doctorate name that he used was Dr. Henry Howard Holmes. He was going through medical school. So, some of these women were disemboweled and surgically had stuff removed from their bodies and everything that they said only maybe a surgeon could have done. This wasn't like a slasher. They just slashed everybody up. There was surgical procedure, they said, in many of the murders.
Yeah, that was one of the things I remember. The Jack the Ripper stuff is that it was all it was like everything was done with a precision hand using a scalpel. That pretty much only a person in the medical profession, whether it be human medical or animal medical, was capable of doing.
Yeah.
Didn't he mostly target prostitutes though?
Yeah, they were prostitutes.
Yeah, most of them were. I think there may have been a couple of regular, what would be considered a normal women at the time, but I think probably about 95% or so were prostitute.
And I think that's why the old Baraboo Inn in Baraboo, Wisconsin, rings a bell to me with him being there. So
I don't recall hearing anything about the Baraboo Inn having him there.
Yeah.
because I know
But
there's
I
prostitutes
may be
killed there
mistaken.
too. Yeah, I mean I don't know the whole history of the Baraboo Inn. You would have to talk to Nikki Wilson for that one. She knows a lot of stuff. Um, but so, um, what is all of you's your favorite paranormal location that you have done to this date?
Oh, mine's easy, and Joe's probably the same. That's Elkhorn, Wisconsin, down there at Bray Road.
Bay Road, yeah.
Bray Road.
The Hampos property.
Yep.
Yep.
So I haven't been there yet. There's talks last year to go, but
Well,
never got around to it. But
get your crap together and join us on the 17th of August.
I would like to, but I have a group at the museum. Unfortunately, on that Saturday that you guys will be coming, that I'll be giving a tour of. So, and I'll be tired as hell because I'll be spending the
Well,
night.
I think the 17th. I think the 17th of August is going to be the weekend after that, isn't it, Joe?
What?
Won't the 17th of August be like the weekend after that, or is
After what?
after we're already down there doing our thing, our trip with Dale and his friend?
That's all on the 17th.
Oh, that's all on the 17th.
Yeah.
It'll be a long.
Oh, well, I apologize. I
We'll be starting up by Darren and finishing off at Lee's place.
It's gonna be a long day.
Yeah. But it's some interesting spots that we're going to be seeing. You know, the Valley of the Kings Tiger Sanctuary that I've been to before. That it's
really cool place.
It's a private sanctuary. I mean, you have to be a member to be there. But the woman that runs it, Jill Carnegie, was very nice and invited us to come back anytime we want. So that's pretty cool. And then, of course, the Stevie Ray Vaughan helicopter crash. I've been to so many different crash sites around the country. In fact, in August, we're going to be investigating three actually: the Stevie Ray Vaughan crash site, the crash of flight 853, the Allegheny flight that collided with a small trainer airplane. Down in Fairfield, Indiana, which is just a little bit southeast of Indianapolis. And then flight 4183, I believe that's the call numbers of the Roselawn crash that basically, it's also in Indiana, that had severe icing on the wings and just went down and just literally when it hit the ground, it just disintegrated. No explosion, just disintegrated. And there were body parts all over throughout the entire field. We hope to, at least I know we're going to be able to. And the funny part, and I won't say funny, I don't use that term facetiously, but the strange part about Allegheny flight 853 is that happened in 1969, and they recently put up a memorial. I believe it's part of a soybean field that's owned by somebody. We're going to try to get permission to walk on the field or find out who owns it. But I have a friend who runs a paranormal podcast and YouTube page called Asa Swift. I don't know if that rings a bell with anybody, but he had a very interesting video that he was out there to show the area, and he gave me the actual physical GPS coordinates of where the plane went down exactly. So we can go out there and literally stand where that plane hit the ground, the Allegheny flight. The smaller aircraft, when it hit, it kind of veered off and went off in another field and exploded. But as he was coming back over the field, now remember, this is 1969, he saw something on the ground and he pulled it up, and it's a piece of the airplane to this day, you're finding people are still finding airplane parts in that field, because you got to remember it's turned over by the farmers as they plow the fields, and it just gets recycled. And it had a very nice picture of it. You can see the rivet holes and where the rivets were. And he put it back in the field. He said he didn't want any part of them taking it home. But I mean, I've never been to a crash site yet. I might be one later on next year when I visit the Leonard Skinner crash site in Galesburg, Mississippi, where they actually are still finding pieces of the plane out there to this day. But most of the time they do a pretty thorough job, picking up, and getting the airplane completely off of there. I mean, you can use a metal detector and you could probably still find parts all over the place. Not that I'm going to do that, but you could probably do that.
What about John Denver? Has anyone investigated his crash site?
No, he actually crashed, I believe, in California. He was an experimental plane crash, wasn't it? He had one of those little experiment. I could call them experimental. Lighter than air.
Or was it one of those build your owns?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. Now we've been to the Buddy Holly crash site. We've been to the crash site of Jim Reeves, who was also a country western singer. We went to the Patsy Cline crash site. We've also been out, obviously, to Buddy Holly. Maybe I already said that. But the Buddy Holly crash site, and Mark and Joe were with us for that. That was a very neat spot. And I've been to so many. Not that I do that out of disrespect, but I do that because sometimes, of course, Flight 191 in Chicago, but sometimes there can be residual stuff that even so many years later is still there. And I'll tell you, we've gotten some amazing stuff at Flight 191. Some of the things that we picked up is just utterly amazing, using obelisks and ghost boxes and mini portals and things of that nature, where we actually got what we believe to be residual voices from that time period. One actually saying, "Almost made it, need power." Just crazy stuff like that. We actually asked for the captain's name, and it said Captain Lutz. We asked for the flight number, and it said 19, and then stopped. We asked for the type of the plane, it said American. I don't want to make this a long story, but one of the people that were killed in the plane crash was a woman named Judith Wax. And her husband, Sheldon Wax, was a Playboy magnate. And they were basically traveling back to Los Angeles on that plane. And her name actually came through. We heard the name, a female say Wax, that came through on a ghost box. And the interesting thing about that story, and it's bone chilling, it still gives me the chills, is that she wrote a book about middle-aged life called Starting in the Middle. And on page 191, she discusses her intense fear of flying in airplanes. Now, is that creepy or not? I mean, that's got to be one of the creepiest things I've ever discovered.
So I got a question. So with all the crash sites you guys have investigated and stuff like that and been to, so how does one investigate these locations with the crash sites versus like a normal outside investigation and a location investigation? How do you treat that differently versus all those?
Well, one of the things is that, especially with Flight 191, we know the exact place it went down. We know the exact time it went down. We know the exact date it went down. So this past Saturday, the 25th, was the 45th anniversary of the crash of Flight 191. And they had a whole bunch of people there celebrating and remembering, not celebrating, I guess it's the wrong word, I'm sorry, but memorializing, the people that died there. And we approach it very similar to doing any other investigation. Is that we try to be there at the time that something happened. Not that if there are spirits there, they're only going to be there at that time. But I think if there's maybe residual stuff, maybe that's when the residual stuff would be probably more active. Then, if there's intelligent stuff, and I hope there isn't, I really don't. But I mean, we've gotten what I believe to be intelligent responses back. We ask a question, we get a direct response. It's not a random word that comes through like a novelist or a ghost box or something. We're getting an actual physical response that seems to make sense. So I think some of the initial responses we got, we weren't able to actually get onto the crash site because at that time it was cordoned off. It was a canine training facility for Chicago Police Department. And we tried over and over and over and over to get on there. And we just couldn't. They wouldn't give us permission. In the last several years, I think going back to 2021, the city of Chicago and the department, the Illinois Department of Transportation decides that they're going to put a ramp, another ramp going into to O'Hare Airport that's going to go right over where all these bodies were were killed, all these with the trash.
Is that new ramp they're building there off 294?
That's it. And
Wow.
I'm wondering what's that going to do to, unfortunately, stir things up or make things.
Wouldn't that be interesting if after they get it built and people are driving along there, especially at night or whatever, they see fucking apparitions?
Yeah,
That would be crazy.
It's one of the largest unmarked graveyards, perhaps, in the United States. 273 people. Their lives extinguished just like that. And there was never any memorial there. They a couple of miles away in a park, they put this brick wall. I don't know if you have seen that, but if you Google Flight 191 wall, you can see what I'm talking about. They have a brick with each person's name on it, including the entire flight crew, the captain, the flight engineer, the co-pilot, everything. And that's when they had the memorial. There was a priest there that day, or reverend. He actually had picked up some dirt from the actual crash site, and he was sprinkling it near where these brick wall was, where it is, I should say, the memorial. That was pretty heart jerking at that point for me. I mean, I was watching it on a live feed. They had bagpipes there. They were playing Amazing Grace, which is always a tearjerker. And then the last song they played was very, it was very appropriate. It was Judy Garland. It was Over the Rainbow. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really. I mean, obviously, when you do something outdoors rather than indoors, you really can't control the environment. I mean,
right.
you got the wind, you got the rain, you got the cars, you got jets going overhead, whatever the case may be. So it's an uncontrolled environment rather than going into a place like a building, your museum, things of that nature, where you have more of a control with the environment. At least there's not that much contamination or extraneous noises that you might be able to pick up. But I pretty much approach it pretty much the same way. I mean, obviously you're going to hear a lot of stuff that is not paranormal that you can say, oh, that's a car, that's a plane, that's whatever.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you guys do Bray Road differently?
Well, I hate to cut it short, but we're over our hour.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
yeah.
can hang out.
part
We can
two.
hang out and tell him. We can
hang out for a minute after this, but
about Bray Road.
there's a show on after us, so.
Oh,
And Jeremy don't like us stepping on toes. So have a nice weekend, everybody. Thank you guys for coming on our show. It's been, great.
yeah, you can catch me on Monday night. Kathy Polson.
And we'll be back next Friday. So far it's empty. And so stay safe. Remember, anything's possible.